Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much to the organizers for the opportunity to speak to you all this morning. I'm delighted to be back in India and amongst friends here at the IBJA, and delighted to be sharing the stage for the second time with President Cambodge. It's been 2 years since I've been here last, and it's actually pretty incredible to see the change in the market, because I couldn't agree with Aaron more. We really have gone from talk to action. And I think in the years that LBMA has been coming to India, come back and people ask for reports, and there's a lot of dialogue. And they said, yeah, they've been talking about that 20 years ago. But now the report is really is different, because we have made that change. So I know you think of me as the responsible gold lady, but I don't actually work for the OECD. It's the other presentation. I could try to give Louise' presentation, but I think he'll do a better job. It's the one with the gold slides. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just start at the beginning. Yeah, go to the beginning. Here. We got it. So what I thought I'd talk about this morning is first to lay out LBMA and the market support for the exciting things that are happening in India. And also to see where I can share some lessons learned in terms of market development, both in London, but also in centers like China. What's gone well, and in some cases, what's gone badly. So I think for a lot of people, they think of LBMA in terms of our quality control work, our good delivery work, and the role we play as that authority, making sure there's confidence in the global market. And that's definitely one important side of LBMA. But there is a softer side. There's a market development best practice side. And it really is with that hat on that I'm here to talk to you today. And I also want to update what we've been up to in the last 2 years since I spoke last, and see where you can get involved. Because I think, yes, you need transformation in India, but part of that is reaching out to the outside world. So it really is a unique moment in time, I think, for India. And one thing I wanted to say, following on from Aram's remarks, that for the international community, we've seen this movie before. And without giving too much away, it has a fantastic ending. But you do have to take risks. And there are going to be hard times ahead. But what I would really encourage you to do is find a model that works for the Indian market. Like, yes, learn from markets around the world, what they've done, take the pieces that work, leave the pieces that don't. Make sure it works and it functions properly here in India, and that you leave space to allow the world in, because that's when it really gets exciting. So if we talk about the spot exchange, and in my conversations, both with government as well as international players, asking, what do we think of these initiatives? The support is overwhelming, and I think that makes a big difference. Having government support, having industry support, and real energy behind what's happening. You've got to have that to get it off the ground. But the next is having a unified tax system. And that's something I really want to congratulate you on, because it's something the EU 20 plus years later is still struggling to do. This is a huge achievement, and something that will really benefit. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion, is the rate still a bit higher than you'd like it to be? Fine, I think you can work on that. But having a unified tax system is vital in terms of getting things off the ground. The next, and maybe a little bit more sensitive, is having a unified and effective body that speaks for all sections of industry. Now, I think we've made progress in not having 5 major conferences in India, but at my last count, 2, maybe 3. Whilst all of these associations are doing an excellent job, and IBGA in particular, there still needs to be some coming together and having an effective market body. I said market body in particular because there's lots of ways you can do this, and I'd be very happy to talk offline about what the options are. You could go down the commercial exchange route and have it as a regulated entity of government. You could have a government body that oversees these things, or you could have more of a hybrid. I think the 2 examples in terms of hybrid are certainly London and China. London, we have an industry body that sets standards. and that's LBMA. In China, you have the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which provides a platform. It acts as a counterparty for spot, but then it also helps facilitate the bilateral market. And I actually think there's a lot of value in looking at the Chinese model because you might find it's a better fit. But for discussion, I think the most important thing is that you have a body that does work. And ultimately, the major role of that body is providing confidence in the exchange itself, but also the underlying metal. And you're already ahead of the game here because you start that work through standards. The Indian Good Delivery Standard has been drafted. I know there's still work to be done, but the first draft is also the hardest. The other important moment, I think, is the responsible sourcing standard that's come out. I think last time I spoke, I really had a key message that you cannot escape responsible gold. I still mean that. It's responsible silver as well, for that matter. But I'm happy to see that message has been taken to heart, and there has been real movement on that. So many congratulations. I think the final aspect you've got to have is it's got to be an exciting place to do business. You've got to have liquidity. People need to be making money. And again, find room for the international market. It might be too soon to have it in the first instance, but when you're planning this for the long term, as Aram says, fast forwarding 5 years, 10 years down the road, think about ways that you can involve the market, because that's when it gets really exciting. So in terms of what we've been up to as a market body, I wanted to share our 3 major integrity initiatives. The first 2 are about transparency. We've published for the first time how much gold and silver there is in London. It's 252 million ounces at last count of gold. And I know that still pales in comparison in terms of how much gold is here in India, but it is the second largest stockpile just to that of the United States. So it is there, and that is also about creating confidence in the OTC market because you have the data that is expected to be seen. The other data we were missing was how big is that market? How liquid is gold? And that's something we look to publish later this year. And getting both of these initiatives off the ground was really hard because you've got to work with stakeholders. We are not a commercial exchange. We can't say you must do X by Y. We ultimately have to bring everyone together to get the commitment and the trust to put that information out there. And certainly with the physical holdings, that also involved bringing the central banks in. So with Bank of England on board and part of the market, it is a challenge, but I'm happy one that we've risen to. The final piece, which I actually didn't plan to talk much about the Global Precious Metals Code, but I think given the recent news and the scandal, you might want to discuss. We asked IBJA to consult on the original draft, and we will be asking them again to look to support this, and also to consider implementation for their members and their market. Yeah, thank you. We've written this as a we haven't written it as an LBMA document. It's really meant to be white labeled because we see gold as a brand worldwide. The world, the press, the critics don't care about LBMA large bars versus Tola bars or Hilo bars. They just see gold. If there's a scandal with gold, we are all affected. So we wrote this with the intention of looking for all major centers to pick it up and help the reputation of the industry. So I really encourage you to take a look. Now the final point, I think it's just a plea for me. If you remember nothing, please remember the LBMA does not control the precious metals prices. In fact, prior to 2014, we had nothing to do with them. And I'll tell you a little story about that, mostly because David Gornall's here, our chairman emeritus from LBMA. We were not involved so much that when I was in the first 5 months of being chief executive, I got a call from the silver fixing chair. And they said, Ruth, have bad news. We're actually shutting down in 3 months' time, effective immediately. And we want to know if you're willing to be part of the transition. You can't ask your board, you can't ask the market, because we think it's a price-sensitive decision and information. So we're asking you, will you help? Of course the answer is yes to that. But at the time, and I think looking back, everyone says, of course it was a yes. But But actually, LBMA was just a price distributor like Bloomberg or Kitco or Thomson Reuters. We were not involved in this. We were just the ones who put it up fastest, and because of that success, we're seen as owning or creating the price. So after the yes, I said, I have one condition. I have to tell David personally. I don't want him hearing it in the Financial Times or on BBC that we've decided to do this. So they said, fine, we'll get the press release, no problem, we'll come back to you. So we get the green light, go ahead and call David. Now, if you've ever tried to reach David out of business hours, he more or less lives in a dead zone outside of London. There is no cell reception at all. So I ring him several times, I try his email, I try his personal email, nothing. I look him up on Facebook, send him a message, still nothing. Finally, I get a bit creative. I remember his daughter is a singer-songwriter. I bet she has some social media pages. So I send Hannah a Facebook message and say, could you please have your dad call me? It's Ruth from the LBMA. So he's relaxing at home, watching TV with the family, and suddenly his daughter stops, looks at her phone and says, Dad, Ruth from the LBMA said, could you please call her? And I think it was at that moment he knew that something big was happening. So I think really my message on that story is, one, the power of a common platform in terms of social media, but also you do have to take risks. And you might not have all the answers now, but it is about doing the right thing, stepping up and finding a solution that works for the marketplace. Are things perfect with the prices? No. There have been major changes across all asset classes, across all financial markets. And frankly, most prices have actually stopped existing. Banks have been pulling out. I'm happy to say that's not the case. We've actually gone from 5 participants to 14. There's 5 Chinese banks represented now in the auctions. And I'd really like to come back in a few years' time and say there's 5 Indian banks represented in the price auctions. So please, get in touch. We can help you because we've not only opened it up, we've also removed last year a credit barrier. You used to say anyone can apply to join as long as they're professional, meeting the standards, but you also have to have $200 million US credit with everyone on the auction. It's a slight hurdle. So we've also removed that as well. So please, I think there's a lot of talk about going from price taker to price maker. This is definitely an opportunity to change that. So I think with that, that was really the main thing I wanted to say. I think going back to the film, it is a movie we've seen before, but I think the world is waiting for the Bollywood version. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the launch. Thank you very much.